It's 8 o'clock.
Good morning. This is Northern Light for Thursday, August 3rd. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Todd Moe.
Senator Schumer visited a St. Lawrence County dairy farm this week to highlight a federal program that's up for consideration in the next farm bill. Without the dairy margin coverage program, farmers would lose critical monthly payments and could lead to supply chain issues.
We need to get this done. And there are problems in the agriculture bill, but they shouldn't affect DMC. We ought to get this program renewed regardless of other differences that people might have in the Farm Bill.
More from Catherine Wheeler coming up.
The State Board of Elections yesterday certified a new controversial touchscreen voting machine for use in future elections. Opponents say the decision is bad for voters and that the machines are potentially vulnerable to cyber attacks.
Our concerns are really that why would we move away from the gold standard that we currently have, in which a voter marks their own ballot and it's scanned in, to move to a system that is more insecure. It's incredibly expensive.
Also, we talk with Paul Vick about his book, Where the Cotton Grows, which tells the story of his missionary parents and a deadly plane crash in China he survived. All that's coming up on Northern Light. Stick with us.
Broadcast of Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio is supported by Gray & Gray & Associates, CPAs, an accounting and financial services firm in northern New York with offices in Canton, Potsdam, and Spring Hill, Florida. GrayCPAS.com. And AdirondackExplorer.com and AdirondackAlmanac.com, presenting daily updated news on public policy, environmental issues, and local communities in the Adirondack Park.
This is Northern Light. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Todd Moe. Two former female corrections officers with the Clinton County Sheriff's Office are fighting attempts to dismiss their lawsuits. Mandy Devins and Regina Moore sued the department earlier this year. They say they were sexually harassed and faced gender discrimination while working at the Clinton County Jail. According to MyNBC5, the Sheriff's Office filed motions to dismiss the claims from both women. Moore has submitted paperwork opposing the motion, and Devins is asking for more time to respond. She'll have until August 10th to do so if the court grants her request. Sheriff David Favreau has said he and his entire department take harassment seriously.
Congress's deadline to pass a new farm bill is quickly approaching. The legislation impacts everything from crop insurance and loans to SNAP and WIC benefits and conservation. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer visited a North Country dairy this week to underline his support for one program that, if lost, could greatly impact the region's dairy farmers. Catherine Wheeler reports.
Schumer spoke at Keystone Dairy in Lisbon on Tuesday to call attention to the Dairy Margin Coverage Program. The DMC program covers farmers when the price they're paid for their milk falls below how much it costs them to produce it. It was created under the 2018 Farm Bill, which is set to expire on September 30th.
We need to get this done. And there are problems in the agriculture bill, but they shouldn't affect DMC. We ought to get this program renewed regardless of other differences that people might have in the Farm Bill.
Without its passage through a new Farm Bill or another route, dairy farmers lose their monthly payments. Schumer, who pushed for the creation of the DMC, says failure to renew the program could lead to supply chain issues and less milk on store shelves.
If our farmers have trouble, the whole county has trouble. It would disrupt and even threaten the existence of farms.
The USDA's New York State Director, Brian Murray, says those economic impacts could go beyond farmers.
What would small communities like Lisbon be like if there is no dairy industry and those that dedicate their lives to it? It's you, the dairy men and women, that provide economic stability to small rural towns all across the state and the country.
Right now, neither Democrats nor Republicans have advanced their version of the Farm Bill, and it's likely they'll miss their deadline. The dairy industry is the largest part of the state's agriculture sector, and St. Lawrence County is the third largest milk-producing county in New York. Catherine Wheeler, North Country Public Radio, Lisbon.
The State Board of Elections has certified a new controversial touchscreen voting machine for use in future elections. Opponents say the decision is bad for voters and that the machines are potentially vulnerable to cyber attacks. Karen DeWitt reports.
The machine, known as the Express Vote XL, is made by the company Election System and Software. It uses touch screens for voters to choose the candidates they want for elected offices and then cast their votes. The machine then prints a ballot on thermal paper, which a voter can view through a glass screen but is not allowed to handle. The ballot is then converted into a barcode. That barcode is fed into a machine that records the results. Currently, all voting machines in New York operate with paper ballots. They're filled out by hand by the voter, and the voter then feeds it into a tallying machine. The board, which is made up of 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, discussed the proposal for hours in a debate that at times grew heated. Democratic Commissioner Douglas Kellner raised several objections, including whether the thermal paper meets the board's environmental standards and whether the lack of an actual paper ballot violates New York state law, which requires that there be a paper trail that can be used if a recount is needed.
We should be steering our voters and our county elections officials towards hand-marked paper. This system is significantly more expensive and has these other issues and lacks the confidence of a substantial number of voters in the community.
Republican Commissioner Peter Kaczynski disagreed with Kellner's concerns, saying it's up to the individual counties who would choose to buy the machines to determine whether the touchscreens are right for them.
That's not our job. I mean, that's the county's job. If the county voters say to their county board, we don't like this type of machine because we can't do X, Y, and Z with it, then the county can say we're not going to buy it.
Board of Election staff said they tested the touchscreen machines and did not find there were any significant security concerns. In the meeting, staff members said they would vote to approve the machines if they could. Commissioner Kellner voted no to the certification, but the other Democrat on the board, Andrew Spano, voted with the 2 other Republicans, so the measure was approved. Sarah Goff is with the government reform group Common Cause, one of several groups who wrote a letter to the board asking that the machines not be approved. Goff, speaking before the vote, says New York already uses the best available voting machines, and that should not change.
Our concerns are really that why would we move away from the gold standard that we currently have, in which a voter marks their own ballot and it's scanned in, to move to a system that is more insecure. It's incredibly expensive. And the idea of transitioning voting machines right before a very consequential election cycle in 2024 just seems like a bad idea.
Goff says the questions about the machines will just fan the flames of misinformation regarding the safety and security of the U.S. and New York state elections. In a statement following the vote, Common Cause called the certification of the machines an exceedingly poor decision. The touchscreen machines could be in place as early as Election Day next year. 2 other machines made by Clear Ballot and Dominion that employ some touchscreen functions were also approved. Election officials say those machines also went through thorough testing and are safe. In Albany, I'm Karen DeWitt.
You're listening to Northern Lights here on North Country Public Radio. It's 9 minutes past 8. Good morning. I'm Todd Moe.
And I'm Monica Sandreski. Just ahead, we'll hear one man's story of how a family tragedy changed his life. Paul Vick shares more about his book, Where the Cotton Grows, tomorrow afternoon in Long Lake. We'll have a conversation in just a few minutes here on Northern Light.
This is Pat Johnson, music with his band, and you can check out more of it on our website. He's part of the Underscore Project. visit us at ncpr.org/_. Northern Light is supported by Little River Community School in Canton, holding an open house for students in kindergarten through second grade tomorrow, tonight, 6:30. Details at littleriverschool.org. And Rickard Environmental in Keene, New York, keeping Adirondack waters clean by providing municipal and industrial environmental compliance services for 30 years. More at rickardenvironmental.com.
Driving around the North Country, you won't see many homeless people, but that doesn't mean they're not there or need help. Today, Amy Feiereisel takes us inside one of the few homeless shelters in our region. She originally visited Samaritan House in Saranac Lake in the fall of 2021. Since opening 7 years ago, Samaritan House has helped hundreds of people break the cycle of homelessness.
Bobby Glad is 43 years old. He's dressed in head-to-toe camo, including his baseball cap. He's quick to joke, even about moving into Samaritan House.
I'm glad it's here, or else I'd be living in a tent right now. My tent's still set up in the woods, so I haven't taken it down yet.
Glad is from Saranac Lake. He's been at the house for 3 weeks and working in a hotel kitchen in Lake Placid for 2.
Now I got a new job, and hopefully we'll be moving out as soon as we get on our feet. I won't be here too long.
Like many, Glad didn't expect to be here.
Well, I was working construction over the summer, and the last month I worked, I got stiffed by the guy, so I ended up here.
We're sitting in the dining room of Samaritan House, an 8-bedroom homeless shelter right in the middle of Saranac Lake on River Street. In the 4 years it's been open, over 300 people have passed through its doors, including Glad.
It's a big help for people in the community. You got no place to go, you got no place to go.
Samaritan House is a place to go. It's the brainchild of the Saranac Lake Ecumenical Council, which is a coalition of most of the town's churches.
And we were hearing from the ministers and pastors and priests in town that they were getting a lot of people knocking on the door asking for help because they didn't have a place to sleep for the night.
That's Rich Lober, the council's president. He says the stereotypical image of homelessness is in cities, living on the streets. But rural homelessness, says Lober, looks really different. It's mostly invisible.
You know, in the summertime, they camp in the woods and live outside, but in the wintertime, boy, it's really tough. The homeless end up couch surfing and moving from house to house, a week here, a week there, a few days here, a few days there.
And this is why they stay homeless, he says.
You know, you can't go out and look for work when you don't know where you're going to live because you're too concerned with day-to-day living.
Here at Samaritan House, residents' only expense is food. That way they can work and save and eventually move out. A typical stay is 3 to 4 months. Residents come here from social services, from police pickups, from mental health units and hospitals. 36-year-old Jeremy Lamont came from 6 months in prison for driving without a license while he was on parole.
I found a job, a full-time job, doing construction.
Lamont says this is a chance for him to change his life.
It's just a new start. So don't have to go to old stomping grounds. Thank God.
Samaritan House has an 85% graduation rate. That means 85% of the people who come here go on to get their own place and live independently. A huge part of that success is 52-year-old Ernie Huff. He's the house manager, which means he's the one here every day. He's the guide.
We identify what it was that has made them homeless in the past, and then we come up with an independent living plan.
Huff helps them sign up for SNAP benefits. He gets them mental health counseling, addiction services, helps them apply for their birth certificate or Social Security card if they no longer have theirs. Those are necessary to apply for housing assistance.
Whatever it is that they need, we get them dialed in to those resources here in the area.
It means that they don't have to do it all on their own. Huff also helps them find work, often in the area's hotels and restaurants. He says their partners are willing to work around the bus schedules, which is game-changing, since most homeless folks don't have vehicles.
Just meeting them where they're at and just trying to instill in them a sense of pride, dignity, and, increasing their self-worth.
This sort of support and nitty-gritty help is what is missing for so many homeless people. There aren't very many homeless shelters or transitional housing options in the North Country. Affordable housing is a huge problem. So even with jobs and some savings, it can be hard for these people to find a place to live. It takes persistence and a lot of Ernie Huff's contacts and connections. And the places are not always great.
It's difficult, but, they persevere. The folks do. They persevere, and they find housing. May not be the best housing, but it gets them on their feet.
When they leave, residents still have many obstacles ahead of them. About 3% come back to Samaritan House. Chris Putnam is one of them. He's 56, has a big handlebar mustache, and first came to Samaritan House 4 years ago.
I bad alcohol since I was 10 years old.
He says Samaritan House saved his life.
And I landed here, and literally right there is 5 AA meetings. I got a counselor I can visit anytime. St. Joe's is right here. This is a gold mine for somebody who's addicted to anything.
Something you'll notice at Samaritan House is how homey it is. It's a real house. There's a nice living area with couches, and each resident gets their own room with a keypad lock on it. That's a real selling point, says Huff, the house manager.
Some of them will be leery on coming here just because they're so used to having that whole dorm style. So they've been assaulted, they've had stuff stolen, but then they find out that they have a passcode for an electronic lock on their door, and they're like, oh.
Samaritan House is a place to feel safe, a reprieve from living moment to moment, a place to get help and start on the road towards independence. That's the idea, says Rich Lober.
Here they can come and they can get their breath, get their feet underneath them, and get restarted again.
At Samaritan House in Saranac Lake, I'm Amy Feiereisel for North Country Public Radio.
Samaritan House runs on a budget about $50,000 a year, supported by Saranac Lake churches, foundations, and individual donations. When this story originally aired in the fall of 2021, around 300 people had come through the house. Today, that number is about 430 and counting. Ernie Huff is still the house manager at Samaritan House.
State forest rangers conducted multiple rescues in the Adirondacks over the last 2 weeks. On July 24th, a team of 7 rangers rescued a 60-year-old hiker who had injured her ankle on the Van Hovenberg Trail up Mount Marcy. The rangers stabilized the hiker's ankle, carried her 1 mile to Marcy Dam, where she was driven out to the trailhead and taken to the hospital. A few days later, rangers in a state police helicopter rescued a hiker with a knee injury a mile from the summit of Mount Marcy. The hiker was flown to the hospital. And in Tupper Lake, an individual was ticketed for having 2 illegal encampments, cutting down trees, storing personal property on state land, and leaving garbage at the sites. Each ticket has a maximum fine of $250.
Jefferson County legislators this week approved a measure that would increase their terms from 2 years to 4 years. According to WWNY-TV, voters would need to approve the change. Legislators say the longer terms are more in line with other communities and will help them settle in and be effective at their jobs. The issue will be on the ballot in November.
The state health department is reporting an increase in COVID-19 hospital admissions, but says numbers are still low compared to the height of the pandemic. The latest data from yesterday shows a 22% increase in hospitalizations compared to last week, with an average of more than 100 admissions per day. The DOH says there are currently no concerns with hospital bed capacity. State Health Commissioner Dr. James McDonald says COVID is a treatable disease. He says New Yorkers should speak with their healthcare providers about treatment if they test positive. Symptoms of COVID include fever, cough, and new loss of taste or smell. At-home tests are available at local pharmacies.
And the Cape Vincent Ambulance Squad is getting its own space. According to WWNY-TV, the nonprofit has purchased a building across the street from its current location where it rents space from the fire department. The squad's new home will have quarters for the crew, offices, and a place for training. There are also plans to build a new ambulance garage. WWNY-TV reports that the squad has to raise $275,000 for the project.
listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. I'm Todd Moe.
And I'm Monica Sandreski. In just a minute, a Rochester family's tragedy and how it impacted the sole survivor's life. That conversation in just a couple of minutes. Then stick around after the show for Bird Note, a songbird tough enough to take on monkeys and falcons. It's the Great Kiskadee coming up at 8:42. But first, Todd has a look at the weather for us.
We have clouds and scattered showers today and tomorrow, highs in the 70s today and tomorrow, and winds out of the southwest. About a 50-50 chance of showers continuing today and tonight, and then about an 80% chance of rain tomorrow. The weekend at this point, partly to mostly sunny, Saturday and Sunday, with highs in the 70s.
Rochester minister and attorney Paul Vick explores the question of what a life is worth in his book, Where the Cotton Grows. He'll give a talk about the book tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock at the Long Lake Public Library. It's an extraordinary account of his Baptist family's fateful journey to China, a plane crash that killed his parents and brother, its lasting legacy, and his lifelong journey to find his own identity and path. Paul Vick was only a toddler when a plane carrying himself, his parents, and his 3-year-old brother crashed in a cotton field in a remote area of China in 1947. Robert and Dorothy Vick were young Baptist missionaries on their way to their first assignment. Only Robert and Paul were found alive, and Robert lived just long enough to dictate his final wish that Paul be returned to his grandparents in Rochester for them to raise.
More than 70 years after the crash, Paul Vick will share his story tomorrow at the Long Lake Public Library. He's also produced a video about his return trips to China. I spoke with him about writing the book, his visits to China to find answers about his family, and what he hopes readers take away from his book.
It was an event that actually captured worldwide attention. It was reported in newspapers all over the world. And our local newspaper here chronicled not only the event, but my trip back to the United States. And on occasion, there was some mention of how I was doing. So those questions of, why are most common.
You have been back to China, and I should tell listeners that there's a video that documents one of your trips called The Vineyard, and they can see it on YouTube, and we have a link on our website to The Vineyard. I mean, that must have been amazing and incredible to meet people and to hear stories. And you were sort of on a quest to find the cemetery?
Yeah, there were 2 trips that we took back to China. One was in 2011 when we wanted to trace the path that my family took when they went to China they arrived there at the end of 1946, and during the month of January of 1947, where did they stay? What church did they attend? They took a trip down to see a classmate, actually, of my father's in divinity school who was involved with a school. We wanted to see all these places. And so through the area director for China and India, we were able to set up an itinerary and go there. And some amazing things happened. One was when we arrived in Shanghai, which is where my family stayed until they were able to catch the flight going to, eventually ending up in Chengdu. But we were able to locate the building, the apartment building where they lived, or where we lived, called the Blackstone Apartments, and that name is still on that building. We were able to discover the church where they attended. We were able to see the Shanghai University of Science and Technology, which is one of the 2 largest universities today in Shanghai, which was started by American Baptists. And we were able to then go on to Wuhan, where the plane traveled from Shanghai to Wuhan that we took. We searched for the cemetery where they were buried because after the crash, the missionaries that had been on board that plane were all buried in that International Cemetery, and we were unable to locate it at that time. So we then traveled to the field. We were able to discover the field where the plane did crash, that which was, for me, probably one of the most impactful and emotional times that I had, recognizing that the last time that I had been there had been the last time that I had been with my family. And so we then were able to go back to a city called Tiananmen. Tiananmen in Chinese means Gate of Heaven, which I thought was apropos to what took place. And we tried to locate the place of the mission site that was run by the Columban Society. Of course, that mission is no longer there, but because of some other information we had, we were able to pinpoint where that mission would have been. And so we were able to go to that place too. So it was really an amazing experience to be able to connect with these places that I knew we had been to back in 1947.
Paul, take a minute and just tell me a little bit about the message to readers in this book. What are you hoping people take away from the book? Is there a message?
There is. When I was just blessed to be born into a family that just was full of love and full of passion, caring for others. And in no time during my years of being nurtured by this amazing family was there really any focus on the tragedy of what took place. The focus was on what you do with that tragedy and on how we each carry a responsibility to help others become all that others can be and to serve in ways that can be impactful and make situations better than they are. So part of this is hope, resilience, and an understanding that every person is sacred. Every person is unique, and that each person has gifts. And the question is, how do we use those gifts? Again, my encouragement is, and what I hope comes through this book is that as we use the gifts that we've been given, we ourselves become enriched, and we ourselves grow. And there's truly a joy in doing that. And my hope is that those who read this book come away not focusing on the tragedy of that accident, but on what happened as a result of that in my life and in the lives that have been touched by my parents and by my family.
Rochester minister and attorney Paul Vick explores the question of what a life is worth in his book, Where the Cotton Grows. He'll talk about the book and his life and career at the Long Lake Public Library tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock. There's more information about the book, a link to Paul's website, and the YouTube video about his return trip to China. You'll find that at ncpr.org.
Lots coming up tomorrow in Long Lake. After you go to that book talk tomorrow afternoon, stick around for the Long Lake Beach. It's the annual Beat Authority live broadcast from Long Lake. Sun, sand, swimming, and great music with free merch and a chance to give a shout out live on the radio. That's from 3 to 5 tomorrow afternoon at the Long Lake Beach for the annual Beat Authority live broadcast and beach party. See you there. Until tomorrow, I'm Monica Sandreski.
I'm Todd Moe. Thanks for listening. Be well.